One big question for marketers is, all right, we're doing all this privacy stuff, but what does it mean for our advertising results? Google Consent Mode can significantly impact Google Ads campaigns, both in how they operate and how you measure their success. Let's break down the key areas: conversion tracking, remarketing, and bidding performance. Conversion tracking and modeling. With Consent Mode Advanced enabled, if a user doesn't consent to ad cookies, ad storage denied, the Google Ads conversion tags will send a ping with no user identifiers. Without Consent Mode, that conversion would be completely lost if you were properly not firing the tag at all. With Consent Mode, Google can still record a conversion event, albeit anonymous. On Google Ads backend, they use machine learning and aggregated data to model conversions. For example, say 100 users clicked your ad, and normally 10 would convert, but 4 of those denied consent. Google might observe 6 conversions with full data and 4 anonymous pings. It will then model and attribute those 4 to the campaign as well, filling the gap. The outcome is that your Google Ads reports and Google Analytics 4, if linked, will show closer to the true number of conversions, rather than underreporting conversions from users who opted out. You might see in Google Ads interface metrics like modeled conversions or a percentage of conversions modeled. This is a direct result of Consent Mode providing that partial data. Impact. Generally, this helps you. It means your campaigns won't look worse than they actually are just because of missing data. If you didn't implement Consent Mode, those conversions might vanish from reports, potentially leading you to undervalue a campaign or cut budgets wrongly. However, modeled data is by nature an estimate. It may not be 100% accurate per user, but Google calibrates it using trends from consented users. The more conversions that have to be modeled, i.e., the lower your consent rate, the more you rely on Google's black box modeling. Remarketing and audience lists. Ad personalization comes into play here. If a user denies consent for personalized ads, Google will not add them to remarketing lists or use their data for similar audiences. So, your remarketing pools might shrink. For example, if 50% of users decline marketing cookies, your Google Ads remarketing list will capture only half the visitors it used to. This directly reduces the size of your retargeting campaigns or customer match enrichment. Moreover, any user who didn't consent cannot be shown personalized ads based on their behavior on your site. Google will treat them as anonymous. You can still reach them via contextual advertising or broader targeting, but not with, say, dynamic remarketing of the product they viewed. Impact. If historically you relied heavily on retargeting, you might notice those campaigns have smaller reach now. The conversion rates on remarketing might remain high, because those who do get in the list are those who consented, possibly more engaged users. But volume is down. You should plan for this. Maybe invest more in prospecting or contextual ads to make up volume, or work on improving consent opt-in rates so more users can be remarketed. Note that Consent Mode doesn't help model a way around missing remarketing data. Modeling is for conversions measurement, not for targeting. If a user says no to being tracked, Google won't secretly target them. So this is a real loss in capability in exchange for privacy compliance. Automated bidding strategies. Google Ads uses conversion data for smart bidding, target CPA, target ROAS, etc. If conversions were underreported due to missing data, it could mislead the bidding algorithm, making it think a campaign is performing worse than it is. With Consent Mode's modeled conversions, smart bidding gets a more complete picture, so your campaigns can optimize more effectively towards the true conversion rate. If you did not implement Consent Mode in a high privacy conscious market like the EU, you might have seen smart bids lower traffic, or bids because it thought it's not getting conversions. Now, with modeling, it should maintain more appropriate bids. Google even recommends using Consent Mode to maintain campaign performance despite consent losses. In some Google presentations, they've claimed that conversion modeling can recover a large portion of conversions lost to consent opt-outs, thus keeping automated bidding efficient. Reporting and metrics. You might see a new baseline in metrics. Perhaps your overall conversion count in Google Ads went up after implementing Consent Mode because previously you were missing some. If you compare year over year, be mindful that last year you might not have had modeling. It's like an adjustment in your analytics. Factor that in when analyzing trends. Google Analytics 4, if you use it to analyze campaigns, also does conversion modeling if consent mode is enabled and GA4 is linked. GA4 will show, for instance, that a certain percentage of conversions are modeled. It's transparent about it in the interface. Ads, performance, click-through, etc. Consent mode per se doesn't affect how ads are served for consenting users, but for non-consenting users, Google in regions like the EU will likely serve only non-personalized ads, contextual. Non-personalized ads might have lower click-through or conversion rates generally, since they're less targeted. It's hard to measure this impact directly, but it's part of the ecosystem change. As more users opt out, the average effectiveness of remarketing or highly targeted campaigns could decline. On the other hand, broad campaigns remain unaffected. Account suspension versus compliance. Since March 2024, Google effectively says if you want to use personalized ads in EU, you must have consent mode. If you didn't, they threaten to suspend accounts. Assuming you comply, you avoid that, which means your ads keep running. That's a performance impact in the sense of continuity. No sudden stoppages. What to watch? Keep an eye on audience sizes. If they drop, that's expected, but you may need to adjust campaign strategies, e.g., use first-party data lists like Customer Match more. Monitor conversion rates in campaigns targeting EU versus non-EU audiences. If modeling is doing its job, they might stay stable. If you see drop-offs, investigate if maybe some conversions can't be modeled, e.g., view-through conversions might not be modeled the same. Check Google Ads conversion summary to see how many conversions are modeled versus observed. If a huge chunk is modeled, treat those metrics with a bit more caution due to the estimation aspect, possibly adjust attribution windows or models. Modeled conversions might have some latency in reporting, though Google tries to be real-time, there could be slight delays. So you might notice conversion counts updating a bit after the fact as models catch up. Overall performance impact. When done right, consent mode's aim is to preserve much of your performance while staying compliant. You might lose some direct capabilities like personal targeting for those who opted out, but you retain measurement through modeling. Many advertisers found that after implementing consent mode, their reported conversion volume recovered significantly compared to when they were just missing data due to compliance. So, think of consent mode as a necessary adaptation that helps your Google Ads machine keep humming in a privacy-first world. Finally, communicate these changes internally. Your marketing team should know that, hey, our conversion numbers might now include some modeled data, which is good because it's closer to reality, but let's understand what that means. Also, if remarketing performance is down, it's not necessarily the campaign manager's fault. It's the new normal given user choices. The focus can shift to strategies like improving consent opt-ins with better UX or explaining benefits, or leveraging other targeting methods. In conclusion, consent mode impacts Google Ads by maintaining conversion tracking via modeling, thereby supporting bidding and ROI calculations, reducing remarketing reach for non-consenting users, which you may need to mitigate through other tactics, requiring adaptation, but ultimately allowing you to continue running effective campaigns in a compliant way rather than flying blind or breaking laws. With consent mode in place, you'll want to continuously audit and optimize your ad campaigns to ensure they're performing at their best in this new environment. Here are strategies and considerations for auditing and optimizing campaigns when not every user is trackable. Audit your conversion data. Start by reviewing conversion tracking in Google Ads and Google Analytics. Are all your key conversion actions still being recorded properly, with modeling filling gaps as expected? If you notice certain conversion types have a very high modeled percentage or some that aren't coming through, dig deeper. For example, maybe you track form submissions both in GA4 and Google Ads. Cross-verify that the totals make sense given expected traffic. Check if your conversion tags are implemented on all the right pages and triggered correctly post-consent mode. It's possible some conversion might not fire if not configured with consent in GTM. Use Google's test tools, the Google Ads tag test, to ensure the tag triggers on conversion. Ensure that conversion actions are not duplicated or dropped after your consent changes. Perhaps earlier you had redundant tracking, like GA and ads both counting something. With changes, verify you aren't missing any or double counting due to new triggers, though double counting is less likely. Evaluate the time lag of conversions. Modeled conversions might show up slightly later. Is that affecting any of your reports or internal KPIs? Adjust expectations or reporting cutoff times if needed, e.g., give an extra day for conversions to backfill. Remarketing list audits. Look at the sizes of your remarketing and customer lists. Have they declined significantly? If yes, that's expected due to opt-outs. Quantify the drop so you know what you're dealing with, e.g., EU site visitor list is now 30% smaller than last year. If it's drastically smaller than the opt-out rate, ensure tags are properly firing for those who do consent. You might have an issue where even consented users aren't being added if something's off. If you rely on Google Analytics audiences to build remarketing in Google Ads, make sure GA4 is receiving consented users properly. Perhaps create a debug audience of users who consented versus not, if possible, to see counts, though GA might not explicitly give that breakdown easily. Consider using Google's new consent-aware ad products. For instance, Google Ads has consent mode adjustments in Google Ads scripts or reporting, if any. If available, you might see a consent shortage metric. Incorporate that into your audit. Optimize bidding strategies. If you're using automated bidding, monitor its performance. Post-consent mode, the algorithm might adjust as it gets more modeled conversions. Audit your target CPA ROAS settings. If modeling added more conversions, your effective CPA might drop since more conversions are counted. You might consider tightening targets if you're suddenly overshooting goals. Conversely, if some conversions can't be modeled well, the algorithm might see fewer conversions. You may need to loosen targets or switch to a more conservative bidding until things stabilize. It's a good idea to keep an eye on cost per conversion and conversion rate metrics. Do they seem reasonable compared to before? If something seems off, like an implausible spike in conversions or a big dip, investigate if it's a consent mode artifact or a tagging glitch. Geographical performance audit by region. Consent mode mostly affects EEA UK traffic. Compare campaign performance between regions with heavy consent enforcement like EU and those without like US. For example, if a campaign targets both EU and US, you might split the data. Ideally, modeling should make conversion rates similar. If EU conversion rate is still much lower, perhaps consent opt-out rates are high and affecting sales. Or maybe some EU-specific tag is misconfigured. If needed, you could segment campaigns by region and apply different strategies, e.g., higher bids for US where tracking is full versus careful approach in EU. Not always necessary, but something to look at. Use first-party data and other strategies. Because remarketing pools may shrink, invest in first-party data strategies. This includes things like customer match, uploading your own customer email lists, or encouraging users to log in or provide info so you can target them with consented first-party identifiers. These are not hindered by consent mode because if a user logs in and consents to your terms, you can use their data within those terms. Look at contextual targeting performance. If you can't rely as much on behavioral targeting for non-consenting users, maybe shift budgets to keyword context targeting, which doesn't need personal data. Optimize your consent rate itself as an indirect campaign optimization. Work with your web team to improve the consent banner UX. Maybe a better explanation of benefits of enabling cookies could lead more people to opt in. Higher consent rates equals more data for Google Ads to work with. This is a new kind of optimization that spans marketing and web design. Careful, you must still keep it compliant, no dark patterns. Continuous compliance audits. Regularly audit that your site remains in compliance as you make changes. For example, if you add a new Google Ads tag, like a new conversion action or a new tool like Google Optimize, etc., ensure it's covered by the consent framework. Don't accidentally bypass consent mode with a new script or tool. It's common that marketing teams add something quickly and forget consent. Having a checklist for any new tag, is it consent aware, is important. Document your compliance. Make a record of the tests from slide 13 and any adjustments. If there's an internal or external audit, you can demonstrate you actively manage consent. Performance versus compliance, finding balance. An important part of optimization is acknowledging where you might have to sacrifice some targeting for compliance. Auditing results will tell you which campaigns or strategies are most impacted. For instance, display remarketing might be hit hard, while branded search campaigns are minimally affected because conversion modeling covers search ads pretty well and they don't rely on cookies for targeting. Thus, you might allocate budget accordingly, maybe more to search or contextual, less to heavy tracking-dependent campaigns if the latter's ROI diminishes. Evaluate if using Google's consent mode conversion exports to Google Ads, if you use GA4 as the source of conversions, yields any differences versus using Google Ads native conversion tracking. Sometimes one might have more model data than the other. Align whichever is more comprehensive. Key takeaway: the audit part is making sure everything is being tracked and used properly given the consent constraints. The optimize part is adjusting your campaign tactics to maximize performance, given you might have less data or smaller audiences. A quick hypothetical example. Suppose you audit and find that your display campaign's CPA in the EU jumped by 20% because half the conversions are modeled and maybe not all are captured. You could respond by either A, increasing budget on better performing campaigns, B, adjusting bids or creative on that display campaign to improve engagement, or C, focusing on increasing consent, maybe showing a prompt like, enable relevant offers by accepting cookies. Carefully, of course. In summary, treat consent mode not as a set and forget thing, but as a new layer in your marketing analysis. Regularly audit how it's affecting campaign metrics and optimize around those insights. Over time, you'll develop intuition, e.g., we usually see about 15% modeled conversions in this type of campaign, so our real CPA is likely X. This allows more informed decisions rather than being caught off guard by the changes. By actively auditing and tweaking, you can ensure your ad campaigns remain efficient and compliant simultaneously.